Content is intended to provide accurate information, however, is not intended as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult a financial, legal, or tax professional for specific information regarding your individual situation. Opinions expressed and provided are for general informational purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security.
Welcome to Game Plan for Retirement with Chris McIntire. McIntire Retirement Services, Northwest Ohio's retirement planning resource.
Welcome into the program. This is your Game Plan for Retirement with Northwestern Ohio's resource for a common sense approach to planning, helping to clarify and uncomplicate the financial world and the decisions that we make with our money, giving us perspective and guidance on how to plan for our future. He is president and founder of McIntire Retirement Services. Chris McIntire once again with us. Chris, we always appreciate the time. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Peter, it's nice to be with you this morning.
It is a pleasure, Chris. Always a good time every time we get the opportunity to visit and talk about these important financial matters. Now, today, no exception, we're going to be talking about what is really maybe one of the most important financial decisions or set of decisions. The process and the thought process behind the decisions that we have to make is the care that we want to provide for others, for our family, for our loved ones. You know, if I'm going to be honest, Chris, as a guy, I think that most of the financial preparations and planning that I do really is for the benefit of my family. I want my wife to be comfortable. I want my son to be comfortable. I want to not be a burden on anyone into my financial future. And so I do about, I would say the majority of my financial planning and progress based on those desires. And I don't think that is far too uncommon. What do you think?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Peter. And as we all get a little bit older here, our objectives change and life experiences, put a new set of circumstances on our plate in a lot of cases. And, my wife and I can speak to that, with having aging parents and, 3 of the 4 are still alive, approaching 90 years old. Her dad's in his 90s. And then having a dear friend with Alzheimer's disease that we also help to take care of. So be a good topic as we get into the radio show here today.
Well, I think that we have a lot to talk about. This generation has become known as the sandwich generation. And so we're really providing that care, stretching maybe far beyond what we have traditionally thought about doing, or maybe it's more of a return to a traditional kind of family dynamic where we are caring for multiple generations, but that burden is really being placed kind of in a different place on this baby boomer generation, not only trying to retire themselves and live a full retirement lifestyle, but also we've got the kids, we've got the grandkids, we've got the parents to worry about. So we're going to be talking about all of those factors and what we need to be doing financially in order to better prepare not only ourselves, but provide that generational support, provide the care financially for our loved ones. It can be a difficult and delicate matter, but if you plan proactively and you know the options that are available, we can go a long way in both providing that support and making sure that we ourselves don't become dependent on our loved ones, both sides of the coin there. So if you've got questions or concerns, you're always welcome to call Chris at McIntire Retirement Services, 800-860-1194. That's 800-860-1194, 800-860-1194. And Chris, when we are planning for ourselves, I don't think that is by any stretch a selfish notion. I think that is maybe the most important part of providing the care and support that we can for others, for our loved ones.
Yes, no question about it. We see it every day in our practice that people, somebody all of a sudden has another health type of an ailment, and how they are awakened to the potential cost of not only on their finances, but on their time of the loved one that's going to be providing some of that care. And, and then where are the financial resources? And, sometimes you get into that I should have moment, right? I should have done something about this in the past. We all hope it doesn't happen. And but it certainly does to, millions of Americans. The financial burden that, healthcare can have on you in your retirement is an astounding risk that so many people choose to shoulder upon themselves. Whereas if their house catches fire, which has a 1 in 1,200 chance of happening, they call up their insurance agent and say, hey, the house burned down. What do we got to do to file a claim to get some money? And if you go into a nursing home, for example, $8,000 a month, $100,000 a year. Well, that only has a 50% chance of happening, and that's going to happen to my neighbor, not me, right?
Yeah. It's funny that we take the time to protect against something that has a very slim, remote possibility, but something that has a more than 50% likelihood. A lot of us kind of bury our heads in the sands. And Chris, according to stats from the Department of Health and Human Services, that number has crept up steadily over the years and is close to 70%, 7 in 10 of us at some point in time, usually toward the end of life, will have the need for some type of care to be provided, some type of support. And most often that is primarily and first provided by the family members stepping in. And I know you have been there yourself. This is a big burden and task, and we've got to take this seriously and try to help our family by providing some protections financially and for the actual state and quality of life. Those are the proactive steps that we really should all be considering, which I think we're going to be talking about some of those options and preparations on today's program.
Yeah, no question about it. And you certainly need to, at least get to an attorney and get your basic powers of attorney. So if you can't make financial decisions that your kids or whoever you're appointing to, it might be a different relative or even a dear friend that lives close by that can help you. So, not only do you need your financial advisor involved in some of these decisions that you make, but you also might need your attorney to help create some documents that transfer the power and allow your kids to, pay your property taxes and sign a check on your behalf with the power of attorney. If not, they're going to court to get a guardianship. And why do that? You don't need to do that. It's a waste of time.
Proactive planning, proactive steps to prevent problems later. And if you need help formulating the plan, pick up the phone, give a call to McIntire Retirement Services, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. Now, Chris, I know that you do not design the legal documents, but you know which ones are important. That's part of your process, is checking that box to see if your clients have addressed that, or if they maybe have not yet addressed that. You strive to help them understand that should be a priority, and you do work in tandem with other professionals to facilitate making sure that those are in place.
Certainly. And, there are a number of different options available, and we can talk about what my wife and I personally have done for ourselves. And, I'll say our younger ages here, kind of in that mid 50s. My wife has turned the age of 60 here, and we have planned for incapacity and whatnot in our estate plan already, because we see what happens when people don't.
Well, let's talk about it from firsthand experience from the financial professional. Chris, what are the steps that you and Robin have taken?
So, in case one of us needed additional health care outside of what health insurance pays for, outside of what Medicare may pay for, many of the folks listening to the nursing home, Medicare is not going to pay for you to go into a nursing home for 2.5 years, for example. And none of those people that are in there thought they were going to go into a nursing home either. They were going to, their kids were going to take care of them. And, some people need 24/7 care. So what Robin and I have dealt with is, somebody with a cognitive issue where we're responsible for their care is, thankfully they had a traditional long-term care policy, and that provides us thousands of dollars a month. And, that was the traditional long-term care. So that was kind of the use it or lose it. Her husband had passed away. So, his money that paid for his long-term care policy, was never used. Same thing with your house insurance. If it doesn't catch on fire, you don't get that money back either. Okay. So, but with her being in a nursing home and even at home when we had home care, her policy was paying the bulk of that bill, $9,000 a month. What my wife and I have done now, how the long-term care industry here has reshaped itself, okay, is, they use a lot more of the life insurance policies that would allow you to accelerate the death benefit on a life insurance policy in case you had long-term care issues. You need somebody to come in, part-time, full-time, at home, in a nursing home, all those types of things. And so, for example, my wife has a life insurance policy, just a whole life policy, the basic policies that millions of Americans have. And it's permanent. That's what we mean by whole life insurance. So as long as she makes her insurance premiums, she'll have death benefit protection. If she was to use it for like long-term care needs, Peter, she can access 3% of her death benefit on a monthly basis. And that death benefit's $350,000. So just about $10,000 a month can come out from the death benefit and pay for long-term care needs. And, we don't know that if she's going to need that, but we do know she'll pass away at some point, and then $350,000 income tax-free dollars will be paid out to whomever the beneficiaries are when that happens.
So one way or another, Chris, and nobody really wants that eventuality on either side of it, but we will face one of them at a certain point in time. That is the inevitable truth. But either way, there is some use of this. There is a value for the dollars that we're putting into these new style of hybrid or linked benefits, life insurance with the long-term care protection type of options.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Peter. And, and then, my wife had somewhat of a health issue back in 2018, so we don't know if she could get any additional coverage now. Something she had is kind of a big red flag, so she might not be able to get any more.
Those things happen in life, Chris, which is the important reason why really we should handle this early. And I know that there are some out there that speak to and promote that you should not consider these kind of options before a certain age. Before age 60 is the one that I hear about most often. But there's nothing that says that at age 60 we are still going to be able to qualify, or that is the best time to get into or to consider these kind of protections.
Certainly, the younger you are, the cheaper it costs. So, and, because typically the healthier you are, that actuarial time factor in there of, when people pass away, two things in life are certain: death and taxes. And, you can help mitigate some of that risk. So, life insurance can be a wonderful thing for folks that want to, leave a legacy to children or grandchildren or even your spouse. Okay? Many people listening to the show here today probably have already saved money and have it, set up for their retirement. So they might have a very little debt, a big 401k or IRAs, that type of thing. And they might not need life insurance in the traditional sense of when they first got married to cover the price of the mortgage, but if you had, would you rather buy a long-term care policy that only paid if you went into the nursing home versus a life insurance policy that someone's going to get that benefit? The only risk is how long are you going to live versus how many premiums you're going to pay over the course of your life. Do you pay more, a lot, if you live to be 100, are you paying a lot more premiums than what the death benefit was worth? Yeah, probably, but that's okay, right? I mean, you still live to be 100. So
you mentioned the traditional sense of protection. And Chris, I think that there are different reasons and different phases of our life, and that's why there are different types of life insurance here. Term insurance is pretty cheap, and that's something that really anyone with kids, with a spouse, with a mortgage, with an income that would need to be replaced, they really should have that in place. That's kind of one of the essential foundation pieces that provides structure and stability and support for kind of the rest of the financial steps and process and ongoing progress we want to make.
Yes. And, like for me, I have a term policy that I got just a few years ago when we built our house. I just wanted to make sure I had something to cover the mortgage here, and I can always get rid of it because it's term and it's an okay expense. The nice thing about certain term policies is, so let's say it's a 20-year term policy. So you have life insurance for 20 years and then the term is up. If you want to continue on, the premiums are going to skyrocket. That's how term is built. Okay. Mm-hmm. Most people would get rid of the policy at that time. But like some term policies, you can convert them into whole life policies within the first 10 years, for example, without having to go through underwriting. So in the example of like my wife, if she cannot get additional insurance coverage and we had a term policy that was convertible, it probably makes sense to convert that to a more permanent type policy,
You spoke about your own experience, and you obviously take this seriously as a planner, Chris. Do you find that people who have had firsthand experience dealing with some of these expenses that can be involved with care, dealing with the loss of a loved one, unfortunately, are the ones that tend to take providing this protection for their own family in turn that much more seriously? Does firsthand experience drive how serious somebody is about this issue?
Yeah, for me, for example, I bought another $600,000 life insurance policy that gave me access to 2% of that death benefit, or $12,000 a month, in addition to the one I had bought many years ago, just because of that fact. We don't have children, so it's really not the big death benefit I'm worried about. We got, I've got other life insurance to cover that. This was strictly for the long-term care side of things.
Because you've seen the cost involved with that. You've seen the burden that could potentially place if unprotected against that.
Sure. Yeah. 24/7 care in your house right now is going to cost you between $16,000 and $20,000 a month. And we did that for our friend for basically a year and a half, $16,000 a month to stay home with 24/7 care. How many people can afford that out of their 401k, especially if you got a spouse that's with you? So with the cognitive, increase in dementia and Alzheimer's here in the United States, and lots of, obviously, a diabetes, I'll call it an epidemic here in the United States as well. I mean, those are debilitating long-term type diseases that lead to other issues as well. So people that have had a loved one with those types of issues, or they've handled somebody's affairs in those cases, are overwhelmingly the ones that will have some of their care coverage. And it's people that have a fair amount of assets, that are the ones that do most of the planning. If you're a gazillionaire, you can self-finance, right? But if you're middle to upper middle class America, and that call it that $500,000 to $2 million range in assets, that's whose money do you want to use to pay the bills, leveraging insurance companies, and, it might cost you 1% of your overall nest egg to have a very good, a plan that can be fairly comprehensive too, for 1% of your assets, and still leave behind a legacy. It's not rocket science.
But they are scary numbers, and for many of us, the cost on one hand of protection may seem like it is something that we've got to work to figure out how to include in the budget. But if that is the case, imagine being unprepared and having to figure out how to cover those costs. Just really kind of a hard issue to address, whatever way we go about it, but much, much easier if we do it pre-planning. You mentioned those with more sizable assets, Chris. Self-insured is a phrase, a terminology when discussing this issue that I have heard often, but never really have been certain as to what that really means. When you look at that cost of care, $10,000 a month, let's call it, and it can be more than that, it can be less than that, but ballpark, covering that for a period of 3 to 4 years, you're looking at $350,000 to $500,000, and you've got to be able to cover that and then still have others in your family left unaffected financially. When you say self-insured. I don't think a lot of people, I mean, there are some obviously, but those that are, I think, enjoy the quality of leverage with their money. They probably would like to protect the assets that give them the confidence to be able to state that they are self-insured. And I know with my house, if I want to insure my house, to go back to an example you said, I don't take $400,000 and set it over in the bank and say, well, I'm self-insured in case it burns down. I use the leverage through an insurance policy.
Sure, you're using pennies to buy dollars of protection. Exactly. And for those that have been through this process, and dealt with this with a loved one, they get it. And even the children of those that have handled their affairs for their parents, for example. So like Peter just said, would you rather, well, I'm going to set aside $400,000 just in case I need it, or I'm going to spend $4,000 a year and have access to $400,000 of protection. What makes more sense? And no question about it. And, self-insure, folks are willing to take that risk, where otherwise, those that can't quite afford to self-insure, you want to carve off some pennies and reserve some dollars. That's what insurance is. Transfer the risk to an insurance company. And, let's be fair on today's show here, right? Sometimes the insurance industry hasn't always done it the right way, I suppose, not to throw them under the bus here. And a lot of times it's probably an agent that has not serviced the client well, or, they sold a policy and never went back and revisited it to make sure that, hey, we've had some changes in the interest rate environment. If we want to do this the right way, and you really want this here, you need to make some adjustments. And, I'm talking about some of those old universal life policies that the agent said, hey, the interest rate is 12%. You're going to get a pile of cash here when you go to retire. Well, the interest rates went down to basically probably the contract minimum of 3 or 4%. And, policy owners have some skin in the game here as well. You need to read those documents and see what they say and add more dollars in it. And, a lot of times when we do a policy like that and somebody says, hey, I want to pay for it, over the next 4 or 5 years, that's more like what we do typically, is pay for it, get it out of the way. You got a pile of cash reserves here. And if you don't want anything, then usually you can walk away with a fairly good chunk of that money. Some of them have some degree of return of premium on there. So don't think what happened to you in the 1980s and 90s is what's happening in the year 2022, for example.
Again, we are talking with Chris McIntire about caring for loved ones and providing the protection, as much financial protection as we possibly can through proactive planning and making sure that we've got the right setup and the right tools in place. If you've got any kind of questions about this, pick up the phone, give a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. Chris, a couple times already in the program, you've sort of alluded to the fact that this industry and these products really have changed and evolved. Can you talk more to that specifically? What kind of changes have you seen over the course of your career, or that that these kind of protections that we can put in place have gone through?
Yeah, well, if you look at it, we've gone through a couple of financial crises. Insurance companies have come out of there, very well suited for that, because they, have to manage that type of risk. They've made adjustments to other types of risks that can come into play, like the interest rate environment. We use a lot of indexed universal life insurance. I have 2 of those policies myself. And so, you can build some additional cash value in there. You can fund those in a more flexible manner. Your earnings can be linked to the performance of a stock market index without any downside market risk. And so I like that policy, that for myself. I've got some nice tax benefits if I want to access that cash value. I have access to that death benefit for long-term care needs, home health care. So a much larger degree of flexibility. And even in the traditional annuity space, right? Because if we're talking about insurance, life insurance companies will do life insurance and then also annuities. They're on both sides of life and death, right? An annuity is in case you live too long, and life insurance policy is if you die too soon, basically. And so even some of those annuity benefits for long-term care can be quite robust. An example here real quick, Peter, is, if I had $100,000 in a CD at the bank making 0.5%, I probably can go over and find a fixed annuity that's paying 3%. And then if I needed to use that $100,000 for long-term care, they may say, hey, we're going to reserve more money down here in case you needed it for long-term care expenses. And each year you're going to get a bigger pool of money in case you need that on a monthly basis. So, there are some annuity linked benefits, just like there are life insurance linked benefits. And some of those are very tax favorable. They might even, in most cases, they're going to provide for qualified long-term care expenses. Those benefits would be tax free when you pull that money out. That's very, those are very unique features that are in the industry today, not like what we had, like what you were facing in 1990, for example.
Once again, talking with Chris McIntire. If you'd like to take a look at these options, at the ability to provide this protection and care for loved ones, for your family, for your spouse and children, to make sure that you are doing the best things for yourself, to do the best things for others, and not place any burden on loved ones, to take the financial steps to make sure that you are well prepared for all future potential possibilities, pick up the phone and give a call. 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. There are some simple steps too here, Chris. And you talked about the legal documents and having the correct and updated legal documents in place. Another big one is checking on the beneficiary designations on accounts. I know that this is something that unfortunately all too often is overlooked. People may not have beneficiary designations at all, may have the wrong beneficiary designations. So simple to clean up and yet so often missed.
Yeah, it certainly is, because that money is going to follow that beneficiary designation. And so if you have something in your will that says, I think I took care of all that in my will, well, your beneficiary designation on your IRA, your life insurance policies, are not going to go through probate, so your will isn't going to have anything to do with it. So if you've got a granddaughter in there that maybe you had a falling out with, or a grandson, for example, or a child of your own, and you want to make some adjustments in that, you can change your beneficiaries at any time. But if you had somebody that has passed away, for example, and you didn't update the beneficiaries, you may end up disinheriting someone, or not having quite the efficiency of your estate plan that you wanted to. And here's an example: a husband and wife. Husband passes away, the wife never changes the beneficiary designation, and the husband was the primary beneficiary, and 10 years go by and mom passes away. Now the kids got to take death certificates of mom and dad to get the money, because they're probably contingent beneficiaries. They have to prove that, that the primary beneficiary, their father, would have been passed away, and, get a death certificate. So just some extra layers of complexity. You want to update those estate plans. Things change all the time. You get grandchildren that are born, and, maybe you want to, give, if you had $100,000 in your IRA and you want to give 80% of that to your kids and 20% to your grandkids, you need to update your beneficiary document to make that happen. And are they over the age of 18 or not? That comes into play as well, too, the grandkids.
And Chris, the decisions that we make with Social Security and pensions, and then just understanding the day-to-day finances, understanding the budget and the bills, these are also essential in the protections and support that we are providing for our loved ones. And I know that you help your clients and savers and investors that want to be proactive and looking to better secure their financial future through these issues each and every day.
Absolutely. And, my dad kind of runs the finances in my mom and dad's household. And if something was to happen to my dad, I'd probably take that job over for my mom and work with her on it. A lot of households are dominant. One does this, the other does that. Not everybody has the blended household where, 60 years ago when my mom and dad got married, that's how it was, right? And in today's modern society, probably both husbands and wives are much more integrated in the functioning of the household. But back in the day, it was male dominated, ran the numbers, and that's how it works at my house.
Well, once again, we are talking today about caring for family, caring for loved ones, providing that financial support. Many of us are the foundations of our family, kind of the backbone and the fallback for providing financial support for others. And that's an important but difficult position to be in. We want to do the best job that we can to provide that care for our families. And that's why it's important to really uncover issues and work through them, discuss every potential possibility, and then the options that are out there and available, ladies and gentlemen, that in many cases can help to offset some or protect against potential issues and costs into the future. That's what Chris McIntire does as part of the planning process there at McIntire Retirement Services. If you'd like to set up a conversation, an initial strategy session, he does offer that for radio show listeners on a complimentary, no cost, no obligation basis. All you need to do is pick up the phone and give a call. 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. 800-868-1194. Chris, a large part of this is just in the open and honest conversations with our family. That's where a lot of this starts.
Yeah, absolutely. And, being able to have some dialogue and having people prepared for when that day happens.
Well, we always appreciate the time and the insight, Chris. Thank you for being here as a resource and reminding us of all of these important financial matters, even when some of them are difficult to address.
Yep, and a lot of these issues are. And thanks, everybody, for listening today. Be safe out there.
Visit McIntyreRetirementServices.com for many additional valuable resources, including other great episodes of Game Plan for Retirement with Chris McIntire. Be sure to subscribe.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor. Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.
Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. Indexed or fixed annuities are not designed for short-term investments and may be subject to caps, restrictions, fees, and surrender charges as described in the annuity contract.